It's Triple G, big drama show himself, Gennady Golovkin, who's going to join us in about 30 minutes as well. So stay tuned for that. Going up against Saul Canelo Alvarez. What a fight. What a moment. What a rivalry. Mexican Independence Weekend in Las Vegas. Nothing bigger. And it's a small little promotion from Essex that's putting on the show. Eddie Hearn, kind enough to join us to talk about it. How about that, Eddie, huh? I mean,
I love that, Ariel.
Isn't that good?
I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. Just coming into America and throwing those elbows. Get out of our way. We're a small promotion from Essex. By the way, we were just talking about the fight, and the guy said I wouldn't have the balls to say this to you, but we're mates. I could say anything to you. I think Triple G wins this fight. How about that?
You know what? I just got stopped by a couple of people. I won't actually say who they are because obviously they work in the boxing industry, and they just said the same thing. So there's a lot of I think there's a lot of goodwill for Gennady Golovkin. Like the first two fights were very close, you know. But I have to say, Canelo Alvarez has trained like I've never seen him train before for this fight. In fact, I saw him yesterday on the stage at the Grand Arrivals, and I said to him, "You look ready," and he said, "So much more than ready." Wow. You know, his neck was like about this big, and he just looks like he's ready to go. And I think this is going to be the best of the three fights. Honestly, I think Gennady Golovkin up at 168 is going to really suit him. I think he's going to be, he's going to have more in the tank. And Canelo Alvarez, he's up against it. He's coming off the back of a defeat to Dmitry Bivol. And the more this fight sort of draws closer, the more people are giving Gennady Golovkin a great shot in this fight. And he's going to give it everything. You know, there's two modern day greats, Ariel. Looking forward to it here in Las Vegas, although here in some kind of nest here that
what is going on? I feel like usually I see you do interviews. You're in these nice suites. I mean, the decor. What is that wallpaper behind? I mean, it feels very 1987.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to stay humble, Ariel. I'm out here. You know, you were right earlier on. We are taking over the world of boxing, but at the same time, let's just remain humble. So for the meantime, they've put me in this wardrobe to speak to you.
Meanwhile, in 2 hours, you'll do your 9th interview with IFL this week, and you'll be in a lovely suite, sitting back, having a coffee. With us, we get this outdated wallpaper.
I thought you were here. When they said you're doing Ariel, I mean, you know, I'm normally in the studio.
Yeah. I was told you were going to stop here on the way London to Vegas, stop in New York. I thought we had a thing going.
I would have if I knew you weren't here. But when I hear that I've got to be on the Ariel show, at the end of the day, we do what we always do.
Appreciate that. Thank you. By the way, you have a big week like this, massive week. You know, I said small company from Essex doing this huge fight of the year, potentially as far as interest and buzz. And yet I see all the interviews you're doing, and it's a lot of questions about a fight potentially happening back home, right? The biggest fight potentially in British boxing history, Fury, Joshua, all that. I'm just curious, and I'm obviously going to ask you about that, but like, is there a part of you that's like, guys, can we just talk about Triple G Canelo? Like, this is a big freaking deal. Can we like not distract from that? Do you get annoyed?
So every fight week is the same because we have so much going on. I mean, look, we're a couple of weeks off the back of Joshua Usyk in Saudi. Now we're here, you know, with Canelo against Triple G. People talking about Eubank Ben, which is a huge fight we've got coming up in the UK. Now, obviously, with the Joshua Fury news breaking as well. It's just boxing, and you know, when you're involved in so many great events, people start talking. Obviously, Joshua Fury is a fight of huge magnitude, so a lot of people are talking about that. But I don't know whether they were calling our bluff, but we accept, and we have accepted the fight. We've accepted the terms. They tell me it's real, and if it is real, I believe the fight will get made. You know, and I'm excited for that fight as we are for this weekend. So I think it's boxing, it's MMA, it's UFC. Everybody's talking about the next one or what might be happening with the next one. So you know, we await the contract for Joshua Fury, and it would be a pleasure to be involved with.
On August 20th, after that fight against Usyk, the rematch, in a million years, could you have imagined less than a month later that you'd be at this point staring at a potential Tyson Fury AJ fight?
Certainly not. I mean, we wanted that fight for so long. Joshua signed for that fight a couple of years ago not even that long ago, because we had the fight all agreed. It was undisputed. And then the Wilder arbitration got in the way and stopped that from happening. Coming off the Usyk defeat, it was everybody's plan just to relax, take a fight in December, take another fight in the spring, you know, get the confidence back, gel more with the training team. And Tyson Fury called out AJ on social media. I don't know whether he felt it was a weak moment for AJ or, you know, it was the right time to fight him. But AJ has always wanted to fight Tyson Fury and said, I'm in. And, we spoke to the training teams. Fighters will always say, I'm in. But the training team, the people around him said, look, this might be the only chance we get to face Tyson Fury. So I didn't think actually the terms were right. But I'm not the boss. AJ is the boss. And he says, look, I don't care. Let's make the fight. And if they're bluffing, then we'll find out. But hopefully they're not. And everything I hear from the other side is they're not. And like I said, we await the contract. And December 3rd, Millennium Stadium, maybe we have the greatest Christmas present for boxing fans you could have ever dreamed of.
Does this feel more real than the last time?
I don't know. Last time we were there, we'd signed the contract. I don't know. Boxing, it's hard to trust people in boxing, Aaron, and again, you go into these things in the hope that everyone's genuine. And like I said, if they are genuine, the fight will happen. But if they're not, then they'll mess you around. You'll receive a bullshit contract. They'll find an excuse. The broadcasters can't do this, they can't do that. But generally in boxing, when two parties want to make a fight, you get there. And like I said, at the moment, we're not talking badly about each other. We're genuinely saying, let's try and make it happen. And from our side, we accept the terms, but we have to see the contract, which we're waiting on.
I know your family has a history with the Warrens, although I've heard you talk very nicely about George Warren, who seems to be the one leading the charge from Queensberry. So how has it gone with him? What is your relationship like with him?
Yeah, it's difficult because, I come into this boxing game with a history of relationships with a Hearn, but not with me. My dad was not at war, well, probably at war with Frank Warren and at times Bob Arum and Don King and all these guys. And sort of I come in and pick up the baton, if you like, and that rivalry still exists, even though it's a different person. I've never spoke to Frank Warren. I don't think I probably ever will in that sense. And I think sometimes it's difficult to communicate with that older generation because they can look at you in a different light. But George Warren, his son, and Francis Warren, who I get on with, pretty well, we've had very good conversations, and it's refreshing sometimes. Friday I had breakfast with George Warren, and it was quite surreal, sort of thinking, wow, actually Matchroom and Queensberry here are having a breakfast and talking about making a particular fight. And it can open the doors for other fights as well, because we started talking about potential other fights as well. So, maybe George isn't quite sort of embroiled in the same past and history of the rivalry. And, if it's for the good of boxing and for the good of our fighters, why not?
Why is it a take it or leave it deal? Why can't you negotiate?
We weren't given the option to, and we were told they'll walk away. So from our point of view, we run the risk of losing it and trying to negotiate for what I felt was commercially fair, or accepting it. And I said to AJ, look, I'm being told here by the other side, if you don't accept all these terms, there's no fight. And he said, then accept the terms.
And what are the terms?
Terms are what Tyson Fury said, 60-40, which I didn't think was unreasonable. 50-50, Tyson Fury wanted a rematch clause. I asked for it to be 60-40, flipped back in a champion's favour, which was denied, but it's quite fair. And they wanted the fight, I wanted the fight December 17, which is another date that Queensberry had held at Millennium Stadium. And Fury said, no, it has to be November. Then they come back and said December 3rd. And we accepted that as well. So it's not a bad deal. I'm not sitting here saying, it was the deal was a joke, it was a disgrace. But normally you'd like the ability to negotiate a few bits, but apparently we were under the gun in terms of time. So AJ said, don't give him an excuse, accept it. And that's what we did.
And how much would AJ stand to make?
You always ask me these kind of questions.
I don't know, isn't that,
am I allowed to ask you how much you're making?
Yeah, well, the difference is, like in sport, everyone knows what everyone's making.
It doesn't matter. It's sport, is it? It's someone's personal, income. Look.
What do you want to know? I'll tell you anything.
I always do. A load of money. I don't want to know about you. You can tell me off camera. I'd love to know, Ariel. At the moment, I'm just seeing your stock. I think I might even represent you. Have you got an agent?
I do, yeah.
No. Are they any good?
Not bad.
I'll be better though, wouldn't I?
Yeah, you'd be pretty damn good. Imagine I walk in there with Eddie Hearn representing me. That would be something else. Can you call up Dana on my behalf and maybe break down some of those barriers? That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. You won't tell me, but would it be comparable?
A lot of money. Look, nowhere near as much money as they could make for that fight in the Middle East.
Got it.
But honestly, AJ's done incredibly well, and this fight's a little bit more than the money. You know, everyone feels like this fight should be in the UK, which is true. But you leave money on the table when you stage a fight in the UK. That's just fact. But they both genuinely want this fight in the UK, as do Matchroom and Queensbury. So the answer to your question was a lot.
Could I ask you, how do you feel about Fury not fighting Usyk next?
Look, Fury had the chance to fight Usyk. You know, when we were doing this other method where Fury was going to fight Usyk for undisputed, AJ was going to have a warm-up fight the winner. It was all done. And Tyson Fury said, I want a warm-up fight or another fight before I fight Usyk. He wouldn't go straight into the Usyk fight, so he fought Dillian Whyte. Now, to be fair to Tyson Fury, Usyk is saying, I don't want to fight till early next year. So I don't know. Look, Tyson Fury is a very smart guy in terms of boxing IQ. He knows how good Oleksandr Usyk is. And I know he comes out and says he's a middleweight, he's this and that, but he knows the pedigree of this man. And he knows it's a very tough fight. So maybe he feels like AJ's an easier fight, and he's going to make maybe as much money in that fight as he was in the Usyk fight. But I think he will fight Usyk at some point, but he also knows how good he is.
Just a couple more things on this. What do you think of AJ's performance on August 20th?
Good. I mean, look, Usyk's very, very good. He's a southpaw. He can switch. His movement's fantastic. His upper body movements. And what he did in the 10th, 11th and 12th round was unbelievable, because at that point, coming through the 9th round, I thought, AJ's got this. And he went back. He had a little bit of an implosion in the ring after. And we got back to the change room. I said, you boxed well. I didn't. I lost. I said, no, but the first fight, you weren't in the fight. In this fight, after the 9th round, I thought you were going to win the fight. I did all square or you up after the 9th, and then he won 10, 11, 12 to run away with the fight. So don't be that harsh on you. But you're talking about, it's amazing you live in a world where it's like, AJ should retire. Like, wherever you want to put AJ, even if you want to be negative about his ability, you have to put him in the top 5 in the world, right? So what? You should retire because you lose to pound for pound number 1. Like, he's young, he's fresh, there's no injuries, he's still learning, he's still improving. So I thought his performance was good. And it's a horrible style for him, as it is for many people. But I'll tell you what, Ariel, there's a lot of people that would never have fought Oleksandr Usyk in his position. And he did it twice.
The post-fight antics, if you will, what did you make of that?
As a friend, I found it, quite upsetting and emotional. I mean, after the fight, there was a lot of frustration. For 11 months, he's been thinking about defeating Oleksandr Usyk. He's had a very long camp and he couldn't do it. And that frustration poured out in the ring. And then at the press conference after, you saw him break down and cry, which I felt like it was good for him mentally to sort of let that all out. He lives in a bubble. People feel that if you're successful and you've made money and you've got championship belts and you've got fame and all this kind of stuff, that you can't have your own struggles in life. Sometimes actually living in that world when you don't come from that world is a bigger struggle than you could have ever anticipated. And the fact is Anthony Joshua is just a normal young man that likes to do normal things. He's from an estate. He loves his friends. He loves his family. He's got time for everyone. And over the years, he's had so much pressure and expectations to be that ambassador for British boxing, to be that good guy, to take photos, to sign autographs, to talk to media, to talk to everybody. Yet he can't go for a coffee down in his local cafe, or he can't go to the park and have a kick around with his friends, and people don't realise the stresses that come with that. And I think that was just this bubble that he lives in and everything just overflowing. And I think, that first and foremost, as a friend, you want him just to be happy. But his happiness comes from boxing and, achieving and improving. So when you put your entire life into boxing and you lose, the way you react is a lot differently to if you've got other things, or, you might, have a business or, a bigger family or lots of kids or stuff like this. And you can take yourself out of that world. He's in that world and he never leaves the world. So it's very, very difficult for him mentally to take defeat when he's a winner. And he found it frustrating that he couldn't beat Oleksandr Usyk. So for me, I liked the fact that people saw that. And I liked the fact that he let that out on such a public stage. And I think, I saw some stuff talk about mental health around fighters and stuff like that. People don't often realise what fighters go through mentally, you know, in preparation, in build up on fight night and making weight, you know, on all kinds of different levels. And when you leave the sport, you know, to step away from that routine, that regimental lifestyle that can give you stability is quite hard to do. And that's why you see a lot of fighters who leave the sport struggle. You know, the highs of fighting, you know, the regimental lifestyle of camp, you know, being around your teammates, being around trainers, your mentors, feeling healthy, making weight and all those kind of things, just sort of leave your life. And, you know, his life is so regimental. But that lifestyle is what took him out of a world that, you know, could have taken him down a different path. And that's why he fell in love with the sport. So I never like to see anyone struggle, especially people close to me, and especially under the microscope like that was. But in a way, I like the fact that he let it out. You know, probably his life is like, you imagine like a tin can, you know, and when you take the lid off, you hear that noise.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like the noise I felt that night, where it's like, finally, you know, you haven't got the belts anymore. We're not getting. You know, it wasn't a disrespect to Oleksandr Usyk, because it was as if to say, for years and years, I've tried to keep these things. You've given me mandatories. You know, you've told me I've got to fight this guy. I haven't been able to be as active as I want. And now we've got no belts. So now we can be free. We can build that schedule and we can go and have more fights, more activity and enjoy it again. Because I think a lot of the enjoyment went out of what he was doing. And when that happens, one, that's sad. And two, that's a reason to walk away. You know, when you don't love something anymore, it doesn't matter what it is, you need to walk away. And especially in a sport as dangerous as boxing. So if he was like, yeah, he's had enough, you know, he doesn't have the hunger anymore, I don't want to compete, I would say to him, I think you should consider walking away from the sport. But he loves the sport. You know, it's what drives him. And he feels like he can improve. He loves to compete. He wants it more than ever. And that's why, you know, you go back to the greats like Canelo Alvarez, Ariel. You know, Canelo Alvarez used to sell ice pops on the road in Guadalajara. All right. Everything for him was about getting out of that world and watching some of the greats and winning those belts. How do you get out of that world, make the money that Canelo Alvarez has made, win the belts that he's won, all right, and still train with the same intensity, the same desire? That's because you have a passion and a love for what you do. And that passion will never be denied or never be beaten. And whilst that still exists, you're dangerous. Right. So it doesn't matter what you've got or where you've come from. If you have a passion for what you do, if you have a love for what you do, and if you have that winning mentality as well that someone like Canelo Alvarez and Anthony Joshua has, you need to stay there and you can't be denied. And it fascinates me. And I respect those guys so much that have so much, yet still are willing to go out and put the hard yards in. You know, wake up early, do the runs, have a rest, 15-round sparring, take punishment in the gym, come back from the injuries, walk out in front of the world to fight another man or a woman in front of all of us, you know? So these guys deserve a lot of credit and respect. And unfortunately, in that situation, you just saw AJ raw. But the response has been tremendous because people appreciate everybody goes through hard times. It doesn't matter whether you've got no job or you're making $5 billion a year. You know, everyone has their struggles.
What an answer, by the way. Tremendous stuff. Thank you for that. So can I ask you last thing? September 14th, can you tell us definitively, like, how do you feel? Confident? Why? Is this really going to happen? What's your prediction? Yes or no? Does it happen on December 3rd?
I'll go. I think if I had to make a call, I would say yes, but we've still got a long way to go.
Long way, really? I thought it was just a contract coming in, you sign it, and we're done.
Yeah, exactly. That's why there's a long way to go.
That's a lot. Okay. When do you expect it? This week?
Contract to come in.
This week?
Yeah, any day.
Okay. Back to Canelo. Do you feel from a pay-per-view standpoint, from a drawing standpoint, that his stock was hurt by the fact that he just lost to Bivol? He's coming into this fight coming off a loss.
You know what? Probably not. And I said this in an interview earlier, and I think this is a great message for fighters, right? Canelo Alvarez is just coming off a defeat. I actually think it makes the Triple G fight more intriguing because back-to-back defeats for Canelo Alvarez, quite honestly, is disastrous. And all of a sudden, you know, before that fight, there was this air of invincibility around Canelo Alvarez where it's like, he just can't be beaten. And now people are going, like you said, I think Triple G might do this. A guy out there just for MGM, I think he might do this, and that's the belief is this guy's not invincible anymore, and there's so much pressure on him now to succeed. So I actually think the defeat to Bivol, I think people understood, look, he's moving up to a weight division he probably shouldn't be in. He got beat, but I think it's added spice to this fight because people give Golovkin more chance and people know that Canelo is under serious pressure in this fight.
Just a couple of things and then we'll let you go. Thank you as always for the time. One of my favorite people that I've ever met covering combat sports. Truly, I love this man. I can't get enough of him.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me.
Well, I was waiting for that punch.
Oh, sorry.
The great, and you may not like him this week, the great Cris Cyborg Sr. I love Chris. I can listen to him recite poetry. You do a great impersonation of him, but I feel like he's been like a gnat annoying you this week. He kind of threw this grenade. I heard you say you're on a flight, no Wi-Fi, you land, your phone explodes. And so now people are afraid that this massive fight, one of the biggest fights in British boxing history as well, Eubank Ben 3, if you will, October 8th, the Zone pay-per-view, is now in jeopardy. Come on, when there's smoke, there's fire. You know this. Is this fight in jeopardy?
It's not in jeopardy, no. I mean, Cris Cyborg Sr. is a guy that I've known since I was 8 or 9 years old, We've never really got on. I mean, we have to understand, like, when my family came through in boxing, he was the breakout guy, and my dad was very close to him. My dad was best man at his wedding. But for some reason, we've never really got on particularly well. But I do respect him. But, he came out in the week and said, I'm not letting my son fight 157 pounds. The fight's off. I mean, firstly, he has no ability to cancel the fight. That's on Cris Cyborg Jr., who is clearly not cancelling the fight. But also, by the way, the real disadvantage in this fight is on Conor Benn. He's coming from 147 up to 157. Now, I know he's no weight cut, but he's fighting a guy 2 divisions bigger. So Cris Cyborg Jr. has weighed 158 something before. He's got to just come down to 157. So when I landed that day, I spoke to Cali Sowland and he said, look, no, absolutely not. The fight's happening. Eubank believes he wins the fight. The trainer come on, said his weight's perfect. The commission came on, said, we've been weighing him. His weight's perfect. So, mind games or whatever, but October the 8th, Eubank Ben, we're good to go.
October 29th, it's Plonker versus Spider. It's Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva. Are you impressed? Are you impressed that Jake is taking this fight? Your words, by the way, Plonker.
I don't know enough about Anderson Silva. I mean, Anderson Silva is 48?
47.
47.
Legend.
But he can box.
Yeah.
He can box a bit by the sounds of things. I mean, I think that Jake's been a bit unlucky because he was trying to fight Tommy Fury. He was trying to fight Hasim Rahman. And that would have actually given him the ability to say, actually, you have to respect me now as a boxer. To defeat Anderson Silva whilst boxing is still, a very impressive part of his repertoire, he's still not a boxer and he's 47 years of age. But he's a tough guy. He has a huge profile. He can box. And I think he'll be competitive. I don't think he beats Jake because I think Jake's young and I think he can punch a bit. But I'm intrigued to watch. And I like what Jake's doing. I think he's out there. It's kind of like him against the world. No one's trying to do him any favors in boxing. It's not YouTube boxing anymore, as far as I'm concerned. We've seen that with other stuff at the weekend, and we have to be careful about that on many different levels. But good luck to Jake, and I would like to see him after this, if he comes through, actually fight some boxers, because I think he can beat some boxers, and then his credibility would definitely rise in the sport.
We love Katie Taylor over here. When are we going to see her again?
Funnily enough, Ariel, on a very similar date to what you just said.
Oh.
The same one.
Break some new.
You can see the return of Katie Taylor. So we're going to make an announcement, I believe, Friday about our show.
Forget announcements. Do it here.
October 29th, Katie Taylor will return. Watch this space. She has a number of mandatories to take care of. We're also going to keep a keen eye on Cris Cyborg, who I believe has got a boxing debut
next week.
Up.
Yeah, next week.
Of course, as well. So she won't be fighting her on October 29th, but that could be one for maybe the end of the year or very early next year. We still talk about the Amanda Serrano rematch as well, who we're talking to MVP about, and the legend shall return October 29th in London.
Wow, in London, O2?
At Wembley Arena.
Wembley headliner?
Arena. Yep, she'll be headlining, and we're bringing her back to actually where she debuted.
Wow.
She debuted there at Wembley Arena, so
versus?
We haven't told anyone that yet, Ariel. So
versus who?
I will announce that in due course.
Eddie,
one of them.
Come on. What do you mean due course?
This is undefeated mandatory challenger. Don't worry.
Wow. And okay, so regular weight for her, right?
135 pounds.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So it's not going to be Cris, but is there a chance she wins this fight? She fights Cris after?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got a couple of great fights coming up. We've got Jessica McCaskill against Chantel Cameron for the undisputed 140-pound title in Abu Dhabi on November 5th, part of a big card out there with those guys. You got Cris Cyborg, you got Holly Holm. I mean, there's a lot of MMA fighters trying to make the transition. I mean, Nate Diaz, probably the most recent, talked about it at the weekend. So we're always up for discussing that. And I think if those guys are not involved in any commercial contracts with anyone, it brings a different challenge. But Katie's very, very good. And we need to see how Cris Cyborg looks, I think, because I want it to be credible and I want it to be a real challenge.
By the way, speaking of that, I know you have this Lee Wood fight in Nottingham. I'm kind of the unofficial mayor of Nottingham these days. I don't know if you know this, but they love me over there. Yeah, we got the forest. In any event, he's off, and the main event is off. People were very excited about this, but you're keeping the card, and you're giving an opportunity to the rest of the fighters on the card to remain, and some are happy, some aren't happy. People like to bellyache. But I give you credit for that, A. B, do you think... I don't know if you followed, you're a very busy guy, you got a lot going on, but this past weekend, unprecedented what the UFC did. One guy came over 7.5 pounds, and they switched all top 3 fights. They switched opponents on 24 hours notice. Do you think that is fair? Would you ever do that as a promoter? In this case, you have, Lara without an opponent. Would you ever change, and I know it's a few weeks out, but faced with a scenario like that, would you feel comfortable rearranging the top of a card to essentially benefit one guy?
I mean, firstly, in answer to the Nottingham event, losing a main event is brutal. We'd sold 8,000 tickets for that fight. Like, the arena was going to be bouncing. It's such a good card. It's a world championship triple header. And like, when that main event fell through, it's like, oh man, you're going to have to offer people refunds. Most of them were Lee Wood fans, so you're going to have a half full arena. But then you start thinking about the fighters that have made the sacrifices. And then, we go back to the struggle. People like Terry Harper that have been out of the ring for a long, long time without income, have been dreaming about becoming a 2-division world champion. Maxie Hughes against Kid Galahad, like, it's a really good all Yorkshire fight. There's other fighters on the card that haven't boxed for a few months. They get paid when they fight. And yes, financially, it's not good news for us. We'll do a lot of money on the show. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to provide for these fighters. So I couldn't make the phone call to Terry Harper's manager, Steffi Ball, or Terry Harper, and tell him, I'm really sorry, but this fight you've been training for 3 or 4 months has fallen through, and I'll let you know the new date might be December. Like, I don't feel like you should behave in that way. And thank you for DAZN as well for feeling the same way. Going back to your other question, I think what the UFC did was quite amazing. Like, I have to be honest. I mean, someone put a tweet out, I don't know, it wasn't you, but you might have seen it, where it said, wouldn't it be unbelievable if in this situation you didn't even tell the fans who was fighting? And literally you only knew who was fighting when they came through the tunnel, right? And I was like, well, that's very WWE, but that is, you have to keep innovating. Now, in this situation, they innovated without intentionally innovating, right? But you have to think on your feet. And it's very difficult in that scenario to go back in, renegotiate with this person, make this fight. Otherwise, you lose the show. So I actually think what UFC, Dana, Hunter, I believe you gave a lot of credit to as well for the whole situation. I know how difficult it is in that situation. You have to think on your feet. You have to be proactive. You have to be smart. You have to be sharp. And they ended up with an event that may have actually done bigger numbers than the original lineup because of the uncertainty and the madness of exactly what was going on. So no one likes to be in that situation, but at the same time, they were extremely fluid and sharp and smart to do it. And sometimes you have to make decisions that might be harsher on others than others, for the good of the show, for the good of the business, for the good of the sport. And at the end of the day, I think all in all, I think they got out of jail.
Well, it's another big weekend for you, the Matchroom team, DAZN, and I have to say, we talked about this a few months ago about smelling the flowers, about taking a step back, enjoying the moment. I've heard you in a few interviews saying, we should pat ourselves on the back. This is a big deal. We should take this in. We should celebrate the fact that this small company from Essex is putting on the biggest fight of the year. So I like to think maybe you took a bit of my advice. You checked yourself a little bit.
I have actually.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I have actually. I mean, as the song goes, I could get used to this. I could definitely get used to this big fight feel in Las Vegas. And as a kid, I used to come here when my dad was promoting shows. He was never really the lead promoter in a lot of these big American shows. He didn't have a big American TV deal. But, I came here at the age of 18, I think I was, when Nazim Hamed fought Barrera at MGM. Herbie Hyde fought Riddick Bowe. So to come here and be part of these huge events and promote these big events, and I know you keep saying about this small company from Essex, and you are right, but now we're not just a small company from Essex. We're a huge global powerhouse, and we are only 20% where we want to be. And we're not stopping because we love what we do. But it's really important in life to sometimes, just wake up and be very thankful and grateful for, one, that you're breathing, but two, the blessings that you have. And there's many blessings in my life, but one of them from a work perspective is somehow, some way, we're here. And it's very easy. And I used to do it all the time. I remember when we did AJ Klitschko at Wembley, I never really remember that night. I was just, it was just a blur. And lately, I've really tried to take it all in, to look around, to go for walks, to look at the billboards and see the Matchroom name proudly up across Las Vegas as well. And, we're very, very lucky because I'm a massive fight fan and I love this sport immensely. So to be involved with two modern day greats in such an iconic fight is incredible. And the way we're approaching things globally, like you said, we're at Las Vegas this week, then we're in Nottingham next week, then we've got Eubank Ben in London, then we've got our first ever event in Australia, in Brisbane, which I can't wait for, then we're in Mexico, then we're back for Katie Taylor, then we've got our first show in Abu Dhabi, and then we could be rolling on into like the likes of Dillian White and AJ against Fury. And people said about, this year has been great for you, you might get AJ Fury to add to Taylor Serrano. Yeah, but what about Canelo Bivol? What about Canelo Triple G? What about AJ against Usyk in Saudi? What about Lee Wood against Michael Conlan, one of the best fighters I've ever seen? What about Josh Warrington becoming world champion again? It's sometimes, I'm not here to ask for credit, but give us some credit.
Yeah, you deserve it.
What we're doing globally. It's never been done before in boxing. And, like I said, we've got ambitions well beyond where we're living at the moment. So keep smiling, baby.
Keep it up, my friend. Good luck to you. Thanks, as always, for the time. Next time in studio, all right?
Absolutely.
All right, there he is, Eddie Hearn, top man over at Matchroom Boxing. Massive weekend for them this Saturday.